On January 25, 2014, Cairo was restless. 3 years earlier, these same streets had carried chants of hope. Now they carried fear. Police checkpoints lined the roads. Armored vehicles idled in silence. Plainclothes officers blended into the crowds. It was the 3rd anniversary of Egypt's 2011 revolution, and among thousands of young people moving through downtown Cairo was a 19-year-old student named Mahmoud Hussein. Mahmoud was not armed. He was not shouting slogans. He was not leading a protest. He was wearing a t-shirt. Printed across the front in Arabic were 4 words: "A nation without torture." Before nightfall, Mahmoud Hussein would be arrested. Before the week ended, he would disappear into Egypt's detention system, and for the next 4 years and 2 months, he would not see a single day of justice. Mahmoud Hussein was born in 1994 in Cairo, Egypt. By 2014, he was a second-year student at Cairo University, studying philosophy and sociology, subjects that asked questions about power, morality, and society. Friends described him as quiet, thoughtful, and politically curious, but not radical. He believed in discussion, in ideas, in dignity. He had grown up during the final years of Hosni Mubarak's rule and witnessed the explosion of hope during the 2011 Arab Spring. Like many young Egyptians, Mahmoud believed change was possible. But by 2014, Egypt had entered a far darker chapter. In July 2013, Egypt's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, was removed by the military. General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi soon rose to power. What followed was a sweeping crackdown. Protests were banned, emergency laws expanded, tens of thousands were arrested. According to Human Rights Watch, Egypt's detention system became one of the most aggressive in the world. Criticism, even symbolic, was treated as a threat, and Mahmoud Hussein walked straight into that reality. On January 25, 2014, Mahmoud attended a peaceful gathering in downtown Cairo near Tahrir Square. Security forces began mass arrests. Mahmoud was stopped by police. They noticed his t-shirt. He was detained immediately. At the police station, Mahmoud says he was questioned about his political views, his friends, why he wore the shirt. No weapons were found. No evidence of violence existed. Still, Mahmoud was transferred to Tora Prison Complex, one of Egypt's most notorious detention facilities. He was accused of participating in an illegal protest, belonging to a banned group, spreading false information. None of these accusations were supported with evidence. Under Egyptian law, pretrial detention is supposed to be temporary. In Mahmoud's case, it became indefinite. Every 15 or 45 days, prosecutors renewed his detention. No trial date, no witnesses, no verdict. Each renewal came with new paperwork and the same emptiness. Mahmoud's lawyers filed appeals. Courts ordered his release multiple times. Each time, authorities ignored the rulings. This practice had a name: rotation. When a detainee was about to be freed, they were transferred to a new case, starting the detention clock all over again. Mahmoud was trapped inside a system designed not to prove guilt, but to break time itself. As months turned into years, Mahmoud's name began appearing in reports by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. His crime became clear to the world. It was not violence. It was not terrorism. It was a sentence on a t-shirt: a nation without torture. Mahmoud Hussein had become a symbol, not by choice, but by consequence, and his story was only beginning. South of Cairo, along the Nile, stands the Tora Prison Complex. For decades, it has housed Egypt's most sensitive detainees, political prisoners, journalists, activists, and critics of the state. It was here that Mahmoud Hussein arrived in early 2014. He was 19 years old. Inside Tora, time does not move normally. Days blur together, weeks dissolve, years arrive quietly. Mahmoud was placed in pretrial detention, a status that suggested something temporary, but nothing about Torah was temporary. Mahmoud's cell was overcrowded. Dozens of detainees shared a small space meant for far fewer. Sleep happened in shifts. Privacy did not exist. Lights stayed on late into the night. Meals were irregular. Books were restricted. Family visits were limited and often denied without explanation. Mahmoud had not been convicted of any crime, yet he lived under the same conditions as those serving long sentences. Outside, his university classmates advanced toward graduation. Inside, Mahmoud counted detention renewals, 15 days, 45 days, another 45. Each renewal felt like a reset of despair. Mahmoud's legal team repeatedly petitioned the courts. Judges ordered his release more than once, but instead of freeing him, security services intervened. They opened new cases, often recycling the same accusations, spreading false news, joining an illegal group, misusing social media. No evidence was presented. This tactic, known locally as tadwir, or rotation, allowed authorities to keep detainees locked away indefinitely. It was lawful on paper, but devastating in reality. Mahmoud was not sentenced, he was simply held. Mahmoud's parents traveled repeatedly to Torah prison. Each visit involved hours of waiting, security checks, and uncertainty. Sometimes they were turned away. When visits were allowed, they were brief and supervised. They saw their son aging behind bars. They brought food, clothes, and hope. Small things meant to remind him of life beyond the walls. His mother later said that the hardest part was not fear, it was silence. Silence from officials, silence from the courts, silence from a system that refused to explain itself. By 2016, Mahmoud Hussein's case began appearing in international reports. Amnesty International declared his detention arbitrary. Human Rights Watch cited his case as evidence of Egypt's abuse of pretrial detention. In 2018, the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention issued a formal opinion. Mahmoud Hussein's imprisonment violated international law. They called for his immediate release. Egypt did not respond. The ruling changed nothing inside Torah prison. Mahmoud remained where he was. As Mahmoud entered his 4th year in detention, he became something he never intended to be, a symbol. His photograph circulated online. His t-shirt slogan was quoted in headlines, "A nation without torture." For supporters, the words represented resistance. For the state, they represented danger. Mahmoud himself remained largely unseen, his voice filtered through lawyers and reports. A young man had become an idea, and ideas, in some systems, are treated more harshly than crimes. But even symbols grow tired, and inside Torah prison, Mahmoud Hussein was approaching a breaking point, not of belief, but of endurance. What would happen when pressure from the world met the silence of power? The answer would come slowly, and at a cost. In most justice systems, punishment follows conviction. In Mahmoud Hussein's case, time itself became the punishment. There was no sentence to count down, no release date to circle, no certainty to hold on to. Every morning in Torah prison began the same way, with waiting. Waiting for news, waiting for a court decision, waiting for a knock on the door that never came. Psychologists describe indefinite detention as one of the most damaging forms of confinement, not because of what is done, but because of what is withheld. Closure, predictability, hope. Mahmoud's lawyers later described visible changes. He became quieter, more withdrawn, careful with his words, even in private. He learned that anything said could be misinterpreted, rewritten, or reused against him. Sleep was irregular, anxiety constant, yet he continued to insist on one thing: he had committed no crime. Mahmoud refused to confess to accusations that made no sense. He refused to admit guilt for wearing a message calling for dignity. This refusal extended his detention, but preserved his truth. Communication from inside Torah prison was limited. When Mahmoud managed to send messages through his lawyers, they were cautious, measured, and restrained. No anger, no accusations, just quiet endurance. Outside, social media campaigns used his name. Hashtags appeared, statements were released, petitions circulated. But inside the prison walls, Mahmoud saw none of it. For him, the world was reduced to concrete, steel, and time. The Egyptian government was repeatedly questioned about Mahmoud Hussein. Officials offered no detailed public explanation. There was no press conference, no evidence presented, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Instead, the system relied on procedural repetition. Renew the detention, open a new case, reset the clock. Human rights groups began to describe this as legalized disappearance. A person is visible on paper, but unreachable in reality. By 2018, Mahmoud's case was no longer unique. Thousands of Egyptians were held under similar conditions: journalists, students, doctors, peaceful critics. Mahmoud Hussein became a reference point in reports, not because his case was rare, but because it was clear. No violence, no weapons, no evidence, just words on a t-shirt. In this environment, injustice no longer shocked, it functioned. As Mahmoud entered his 5th year of detention, international pressure intensified. Diplomats raised concerns quietly. Rights organizations repeated their calls publicly. The UN's ruling remained on record. And then, without warning, the system shifted. In March 2019, Mahmoud Hussein was informed that he would be released. There was no explanation, no acknowledgement of error, just an order. After 4 years and 2 months, the prison doors opened. But freedom, Mahmoud would soon learn, is not the same as restoration. In March 2019, after more than 4 years in detention, Mahmoud Hussein was summoned inside Tora prison. There was no buildup, no explanation, no apology. He was told simply, "You are being released." Mahmoud did not celebrate. Years of uncertainty had taught him caution. Prison had trained him not to believe good news until it was real. Later that day, Mahmoud walked out of Tora prison. He was 24 years old. He had entered as a teenager. Mahmoud was not released unconditionally. He was placed under probationary supervision. For a period of time, he was required to report regularly to authorities. His movements were monitored. His public speech remained risky. Freedom came with boundaries. There was still no trial, no ruling clearing his name, no official acknowledgement that his detention had been unjust. Legally, the system had simply let go. Re-entering society was not easy. Mahmoud returned to a world that had moved on without him. Friends had graduated, some had left the country, others avoided contact out of fear. His education had been interrupted, his career plans erased. The psychological effects lingered. Years of surveillance, silence, and uncertainty do not end at the prison gate. Mahmoud spoke rarely to the media. When he did, his words were careful, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had learned the cost of speaking. No official was disciplined, no judge was questioned, no policy was changed. The system that held Mahmoud for over 4 years remained intact. Human rights organizations welcomed his release, but emphasized the truth. Release is not justice. Justice requires acknowledgement. Justice requires reform. Justice requires that what happened does not happen again. For Mahmoud Hussein, none of that followed. Mahmoud Hussein's story is not only about one man, it is about a system where laws are used to delay truth, where detention replaces trial, where silence becomes policy. His case drew attention because it was simple: a student, a t-shirt, a sentence calling for dignity. If that could lead to years behind bars, what could happen to those without names, without visibility, without support? Mahmoud became known. Thousands remain unknown. A nation without torture. 4 words. They did not call for violence. They did not threaten the state. They did not name an enemy. They asked for humanity, and for that, a young man lost 4 years of his life. Sometimes injustice does not announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through forms, through renewals, through delays that stretch into years. Mahmoud Hussein did not seek to become a symbol. He did not plan to represent injustice. He wore a message he believed in and paid a price he did not deserve. His story forces a difficult question. What happens when asking for dignity becomes dangerous? Until that question is answered, fully and honestly, the words on Mahmoud's t-shirt remain unfinished. A nation without torture. Not a slogan, a responsibility. If you believe no one should lose years of their life without trial, leave your thoughts in the comments. Silence is how injustice survives.